Hopefully you guys are having a good Christmas. I decided I'm going to combine day 23 and the final day of Vlogmas into one, since day 23 was kind of a failed video, and if you only want to see how to buy and sell discs, go ahead and use the chapters in this video and skip ahead. But anyways, I want to go over day 23 of Vlogmas, obviously, because I did shoot something, and I decided, since I've been throwing every single day of Vlogmas, basically, that I wanted to do a distance contest and see how far I can throw. I did have one decent throw, but there was a massive problem with my idea. There was ice everywhere except for on the cement. So everywhere in the grass was like completely covered in ice, and in order to have the best wind, I would have to throw off of the ice. So basically, I was throwing into a right to left wind, and every single time my disc went on anhyzer, it would basically just like dive bomb into the ground almost. It wasn't the strongest wind, but it was definitely affecting these super lightweight discs that I was throwing. I did manage to accidentally shank one on hyzer, and I think it went about 390 feet or something in the air, but then it took a massive skip and got all the way to almost 460 feet. So not a complete failure, but I did want to have some decent drives, and honestly, I didn't have any. I threw them pretty good how I normally would, and they just pretty much dive bombed to the ground. A few of them even rolled out. Like, they would just, I would throw it normal, I'd throw it almost flat, and these things are a little bit flippy, so as soon as I go anhyzer, just turn into a roller. It was not the greatest video. But anyways, guys, now you've made it to where I'm gonna teach you how to buy and sell disc golf discs. And this is just going to be like a basic video, and I'm not going to go too specific into anything. Now, before I get into brands and plastics and where to buy and sell them, let's talk about the categories of discs that you would buy and sell. Now, the first category is uncommon or sought after in production discs. So these are the same discs you're going to find in the store, but these are like hand-picked or, you know, rarer versions of those discs. So a good example of this category is something like a black Champion Firebird. So a Champion Firebird is, you know, like 16 bucks if it's like current production, but like a black one might go for like 25 bucks. So in this category, you're not going to make too much money, but if you do come across these discs like in your tournament or whatever, you know, you're playing like AM2 and you have some extra tournament money to spend, go ahead and pick up some black discs. I'm telling you, black production discs usually sell for a little bit more just because of the color. It's pretty rare, and you usually don't see this color in the stores, at least in my experience. So my example of this category is this Star Wraith. Now, I don't know if this stamp is rare. I don't believe it is, because I've never really come across this stamp and seen like a value for it, but the thing about it is it's super domey. So if someone was looking for a Wraith and I was selling this one, this is actually one of my backups, but like, I would think this is a more sought after Wraith than just a normal Star Wraith in the store, just because of its profile is pretty domey. So the second category is the out of stock category. Now, many times these discs are still in production. They're just hard to come by. A good example is pretty much anything from Discmania that's not active line. And my example of this is this Innova Pig here. So I got this at the Innova factory store online, but they no longer have it, and this is a rare stamp, so it's sought after. Now, this category can make a little bit more money than the first category. The reason being is sometimes you pick up some of these discs that were in stock and now they're out of stock, and then they go up by maybe double their price. Now, usually that's only like $16 or $20 more, but there is some wiggle room to make a profit, and you can still make a profit by shipping these. Sometimes you do have to be careful. For example, I think this pig brand new on the Innova store was about $14, $13.99, but if you only buy a few, you have to pay for shipping. Luckily, I was buying a whole bunch of discs to resell, so the shipping was free, so I'm able to sell this at a price that is reasonable to somebody, and if I have to ship it, it's still reasonable to that person, and I'm still making a decent profit off these. Third category, it's the out of production category. Now, I'm going to be very general about this because there's so many discs in this category from so many brands. I'm just going to tell you guys, basically, it's discs that a company no longer makes. So my example is a first run Mako. This is the original Mako. They don't make the Mako anymore. And this is the category where you kind of want to start auctioning off the discs. I'm going to get to where you can auction them off in a minute, but these types of discs can have kind of a wide range of values depending on how long they've been out of production. And real quick, there's a really important category of discs in the out of production category, which is pre-flight number. This applies mainly to the Innova discs. Basically, this means the disc does not have flight numbers on the stock stamp. So this is a picture of a pre-flight destroyer, and that means this destroyer was made before 2009, because after 2009, Innova started to stamp this flight number system on their discs. But this only applies to stock stamp discs for the most part. As you can see, this disc is a custom stamp, so we don't actually know how old or how new it is. There are more ways to tell the age of a disc, but for the sake of this video and being very general and making it easy, just stick with stock stamps when it comes to out of production. Typically, if it's a popular mold or was a popular mold, over time, it becomes a little bit more pricey, so you can get a little bit more money out of it. But I will say, always be careful and try not to sell for the absolute max unless it's like the most perfect version of that disc. So this Mako has never been thrown, it's never been used, and I would say it's like almost perfect condition, so maybe I'm asking near top dollar. Personally, I like to ask just below top dollar for pretty much any really nice disc I have, unless it's a one-of-a-kind disc, which we're going to get into in a minute. And the reason for that is because obviously you want the disc to sell. You're not keeping the discs around, you want them to eventually sell. Now a quick tip about out of production plastic. Basically, almost everything from Innova that's out of production is worth buying and selling. There's very few molds that are not worth buying and selling from Innova that are out of production. But sadly, things from Discraft, like older molds from Discraft, are pretty much worth nothing to a lot of people. So don't bother unless it's a very special, very nice out of production disc from Discraft. Now, I will say if you have an out of production Buzz, like a first run or a 10-year Buzz, those types of discs can be worth a lot of money, but like I said, it's got to be one of the most sought after out of production discs from Discraft. And before we move on to the second category, I will say everything that's Innova made by Discmania, the older Discmania stuff, is definitely sought after, and I would consider it out of production because they're definitely starting to tweak their molds a little bit. So it's not going to be exactly the same as it used to be, and those discs are still worth a lot. But one exception is, I don't think the original Discmania P2 is worth as much as it used to be because they came out with the new P2s. Moving on to the fourth category, this one is kind of limited, but it's kind of those like one-off rare discs, and it can be kind of from any brand. So my example of this is the Aerobie Epic. These are worth a lot if they're super brand new. This one is obviously used. Probably still worth about like 60 bucks, but I'm probably not going to get rid of it. It's just like the coolest thing. You will never like see something like this. And that's why people are so after it. Like, no one really cares about Aerobie, but when you say Aerobie Epic, the disc golfers are excited because like, oh, that disc has the weird, super weird rim underneath, you know, stuff like that. So some examples of this category are like the Discmania Tilt, the Reptilian Stego. There's definitely more of these discs out there. You could even say something like the Innova Mamba might be one of these discs just because it's such a weird, understable disc. But typically discs in this category are going to be really not that popular and hard to come by. And before I get into the last category, just so you know, all these are really general categories so I can help explain how to buy and sell the discs a little bit better. But the final category is the one-of-a-kind category. This is where you don't necessarily have a value in mind. It's kind of where you put it up for auction for sure. And this one's one-of-a-kind because Simon Lizotte used to bag it, right? We're not exactly sure how much this disc is actually worth. We've seen discs from Simon Lizotte go for like thousands of dollars sometimes on the Facebook Discmania page. And without even trying to sell this disc, people were offering me hundreds of dollars, like in private messages. And I'm not ready to sell it. I don't know if I will sell it. I'm considering it, but I'm not exactly sure. But if you do have a one-of-a-kind disc where there's not any more like it, that's when you definitely want to get a value by putting it in an auction. But before we continue, more about one-of-a-kind discs. Just because a disc is signed does not make it one of a kind. A lot of people actually do not like discs with a signature on it, unless it's a very special or rare disc. Sometimes even a normal disc, maybe it's like from 2012. Imagine if it was signed by Paul McBeth the year he won his first world championship. Then it might be worth some money. So you kind of have to do some research on whether these signatures do make it a one-of-a-kind disc or not. A lot of times signatures are not adding any value, and they're usually decreasing the value. There's definitely more examples of one-of-a-kind discs. For example, a lot of out-of-production stuff that is extremely on the high end can be considered a one-of-a-kind disc. For example, if you had a first-run champion orc from Innova, they didn't have a Proto Star, but apparently they're like yellow in pre-flight and they have a 2004 stamp on it. So if you had something like that, that would be pretty much considered a one-of-a-kind disc. So anything super, super high-end, rare, out of production can get into that one-of-a-kind disc category, and this is where you kind of make the price for the disc. So before I talk about places to go and buy discs, let's talk about a few guidelines on discs you're kind of looking for. So definitely stuff that's out of production and Innova. You can't really buy a lot of out of production discrafts and expect it to be worth a lot of money. Sometimes if it's like in perfect condition, even if it's like a Discraft Reaper, it will still be worth some money, but usually discs like that are not going to go for more than like 20 bucks, so it's going to be hard to still make a profit and be able to ship it if you're selling it online. Second, you want to think about the most popular and top players, so discs by them or their tour series or their line are definitely going to be worth more than a lot of the other tour series discs out there. So for example, Paul McBeth, Paige Pierce, Simon Lizotte, Eagle McMahon. And then you kind of have like the tier 2 tour series discs like Kyle Klein and Garrett Gurthey, for example. I could go on, but basically stick to discs from like Simon, Paul McBeth, Paige Pierce, Eagle McMahon. All four of these people, all their discs are going to sell out every single time. And I know what you're thinking, but what about like Nate Perkins? Now, there is an exception, like the Nate Perkins Night Strike is a very valuable disc because it's a C-Line FD, but Nate Perkins discs aren't necessarily intrinsically valuable, so you have to be careful on which Pros Tour Series discs you actually go ahead and buy. Quick summary before I tell you places to buy the discs. Discs from the top pros, out of production stuff if you can find it, and then definitely just stuff that is uncommon is always good to take a look at. So there's like 4 main places to buy discs. The first one is in person, so this is either at like a tournament. A lot of times you can pick up good stuff at tournaments. They have those huge bins of discs, and you'd be surprised what you find in there sometimes. So always check the discs at a tournament. Even if you didn't win any money, you might be able to make, you know, your entry back by buying a bunch of discs and then selling them. You'd be really surprised at the stuff they have at tournaments sometimes. So definitely tournaments and disc shops. Same with disc shops. They usually have only current production stuff, and it's usually not worth a lot, but sometimes you can find an uncommon current production thing or something that's out of stock because it's still a new disc, it's still in production. You know, it's something that's out of stock online, so pick that up, go ahead and resell it. Always check disc shops. So those are 2 places pretty much in person. The second place to go ahead and buy discs is definitely Facebook Marketplace or the Facebook pages for that brand. So Innova Collector page, a huge Facebook page that I definitely use to buy and sell a lot of discs. And even sometimes for a very popular mold, there'll be a Facebook page. For example, the place I'm selling that white pig is on an Innova pig page, just for Innova pigs. So you'd be surprised. I'm sure there's a Discraft Buzz page. I'm sure there's a Discraft Luna page, for example. So definitely go ahead and check out those places. I will say you don't normally want to buy the discs from those pages. Now, I will say on those Facebook pages, it is a good idea to look at any post with numerous discs in there, because when there's numerous discs, they're trying to get rid of them, and they're usually going to be at a good price for you to grab. Especially if you're going to grab multiple, you can usually strike a bargain so you can get a better margin on your profits later on. But I will say, definitely avoid buying single discs most of the time, unless you know exactly what you're looking for. A lot of the time they're asking the prices that I know they're worth, right? If you're trying to buy and sell them, it's not worth your time. Obviously, if you want the disc, yeah, go ahead and buy it. A lot of these times, these are rare discs, so a lot of times people are going to sell them for what they're worth. The third place to buy discs is Play It Again Sports. Go ahead, go to Play It Again Sports online. They update the page like every day, every other day. There's tons of discs on there, but they don't always label discs correctly, so sometimes you really have to look at the disc and see what you're buying. For example, I've got 3 discs here from Play It Again Sports I have yet to sell. This one I might not, but from first glance you might not be able to tell what this is, but if you look really closely you can tell it's a pre-flight Champion Monster, which is an out of production mold, and I'm sure I could get rid of this thing pretty easily if I wanted to. It's not worth a ton of money, but usually on Play It Again Sports, the thing is, they sell the discs for very cheap. Obviously you have to pay for shipping unless you go there in person. You can get the disc for a better price, but usually you can pick up stuff like this that's out of production, and it might be labeled correctly, but it might not be. So here's another disc. It's a Destroyer, which is definitely one of the most popular molds from Innova, but it's a Steve Brinster Destroyer, which isn't the most sought after, but I got it for a good price, and I know that it's probably worth around $30, so it's a decent buy. The final disc that I wanted to show you from Play It Again Sports is a Metal Flake T-Bird 3. And actually, it had a lot of ink on it, but the ink came right off. Obviously, you can't even tell that anyone had their name on it originally. And Metal Flake is one of those kind of like out of production plastics. You don't really see Metal Flake anymore. So pretty much any relatively popular mold that's Metal Flake, definitely go ahead and pick this up. Like, I think this thing is probably worth around like $45, and I got it for about $12 shipped, so always check Play It Again Sports. Now the final place to buy discs, in my opinion, is eBay. So eBay can be a really good place to buy discs, but the best place to get deals on eBay for disc golf discs is looking at Disc Golf Lot. So just type in the search Disc Golf Lot. It's going to show posts with multiple discs in the same post for sale rather than just one. And the goal of buying, secret to buying these lots, sometimes it'll be like $80 for a couple discs, but if you can find one of those discs to be worth what they're asking for or what the current bid is, it's almost always worth it. So make sure there's at least 1 to 2 discs that are worth more than the value of what they're asking, because usually they're just trying to get rid of some discs, so this is almost always the best way to pick up some discs. The only drawback for buying the discs on eBay is usually there's all these like little fees, so the shipping cost of course, and then there's like a tax. But I will say it's definitely the most professional, except for buying in person, so don't be afraid of buying stuff on eBay. Now the 3 places that I sell the discs, the first one is definitely in person, and I think in person is the best. You don't have to worry about shipping costs, you don't have to worry about shipping or packaging anything. And the best part about selling in person is you can bring all the discs you have for sale, and you might be able to sell more than just one. So let's say you met someone at a league and you ask them, you know, what discs do you like to throw? Or are you looking for any discs? That's what I usually do. I usually ask people that I see frequently, are they looking for any discs? If I have them, I'll bring them, plus I'll bring other discs. So when people buy or look at the discs that I know they're interested in, there's also these other ones they can look at, and who knows, you might actually sell a couple of discs more than you thought you were going to sell. The second place I like to sell the discs for sure is the Facebook pages dedicated to that brand or type of disc. So for example, if I was going to sell this one-of-a-kind disc, I would go on the Discmania marketplace, because that's probably the best place to sell this thing. There's a lot of active members, and it's 4 Discmania discs, and this just happens to be not only a rare mold and rare plastic, but it happens to be owned by Simon Lizotte. Now, it might not be that obvious which page to sell the discs on. Like, for example, this one is really obvious, but like, let's say you wanted to sell a Metal Flake T-Bird and your Aerobie Epic at the same time. So which page would you do that on? Well, there happens to be a disc golf buy, sell, and trade page, which is kind of like all the brands in one. Most pages don't want you to post a mix of brands. Usually it's like, just post Discraft, just post Innova, whatever, just post Prodigy. So make sure you're on the right page to sell the disc. And then the last place I like to sell discs is eBay. It's the easiest way to do it. I don't have to message a whole bunch of people. It's just a professional bidding system, and everything is sent directly to my bank. The only downside of this is there's usually going to be a fee from eBay But something cool about eBay is there's definitely ways to customize the buying and selling of the disc. So let's say I wanted to sell this Aerobie Epic, but I wanted to start the bidding like at $1 or something so I can get a lot of people in. But if it only reaches like $25 because people aren't active during that time, I don't want it to sell for $25. You can set a reserve price. So let's say the minimum that I want it to go for is like $35. So if it never reaches over $35, it won't sell, but people can still bid on it. So there's cool things like that, and you don't have to worry about people on Facebook being mad when you don't sell a disc for super low because no one's paying attention to the post. And on top of that, you can sell multiple discs at the same time, so you don't have to worry about 20 messages from 20 different people on your phone from Facebook. You can just monitor all your posts and see if people are bidding on them. And then once they're sold or whatever, you'll get a message from eBay, you'll get their address and everything to send it to, and it's pretty easy. So out of these three options, I would have to rank in-person selling obviously being the best. I would have to say Facebook is number 2 for actually selling the disc because you can talk with the buyer, you can offer them more discs, you can come up with a price, and there's less fees than eBay. But I will say eBay is definitely a good option, and do not ignore it. And one more thing to keep in mind, there's definitely different buyers on Facebook and eBay, even though they're both online. So you'd be surprised at which discs no one's interested in on Facebook, but they sell really easily on eBay. Anyways guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the Vlogmas. That's going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I had a video planned for day 24 of Vlogmas that we're eventually going to do. I just didn't get to do it in time for Vlogmas, so you'll see that be the next video on this channel most likely. Anyways guys, I'll see you in the next one. Before I go, let me know if you guys want a more detailed video or just a video of me picking and buying discs so you can get a better idea of some of the discs I look for. I can give you some of the values and whatnot as we go. Let me know if you guys want to see that. I don't know if you guys are even curious about buying and selling discs, but I just wanted to make this video because I've been doing it for the last several months and it's really fun for me. And just figured I'd give you guys a little tutorial video for Vlogmas. But anyways, I'll see you in the next one.